I was.
Oh, good. Yeah. I guess that's with kids. Somebody gets it and it just spreads around.
Yeah,
Everybody gets it. So,
it's very frustrating. And it was strep. And I have two of my daughters have really bad eczema. One of them got the strep in her eczema sores
ooh.
and it got infected, and she still, even today, has bandages all over her hands. Um, yeah, it can get really dangerous if you have a susceptibility to it. They've been hospitalized for this same kind of thing. So
So they're
it
doing
takes
okay
that.
now? Everybody?
Yeah. Yeah. Still, yeah, she still has to keep the bandages on, which is hard at school. She can't wash her hands at school
Mm-hmm.
because she can't get the bandages wet. So it just makes it really complicated. So she
Well,
was home for most of the week last week.
yeah, I don't know how you have time for all this with
Yeah.
with all the stuff you're doing. So
Yeah.
glad
So
you're
last week, thankfully, was finals week. And so I didn't have any classes. So I was able to stay home, but it was complicated with still trying to get work done. Anyway, that actually brings me to a question I have for you. Because I have, I'm starting a new semester and I have classes at different times. I'm curious if, and we also have that big sports camp coming up at the end of May. I'm curious if it might be beneficial if we either find a different time to meet
mm-hmm.
or just pause our meetings for a month and then get back into it after so I can start focusing on it again. Because I feel right now like I can't dedicate the time that is necessary to actually be helpful
Mm-hmm.
to the project because I feel really stretched thin right now.
And then what's after May? Or you're saying May or
Yeah, so the camp is May 30th and 31st. And once that's over, I mean, I'll still have all of my normal things, but it won't be unsustainable anymore. Right now, like for the next month, it's going to be very unsustainable. So
so
I have
you
to go ahead.
just so if we had a different day, it would still be problematic. Or
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly problematic, right? Like this specific time doesn't quite work because I have the class right after and meetings. But so it could work, but I still wouldn't be able to be very helpful. Like I could
mm,
still meet once a week, but as it stands right now, I can't do anything outside of this meeting.
okay. Well, maybe we could just every second week or something on a different date to kind of just to maintain the, and
Yeah.
not expect, do anything outside of this.
Yeah. And I hate to lose momentum as
Yeah.
well. And so, once we have something that's going weekly, anytime
Hmm.
we take a break, it
Yeah.
tends to mess with the momentum.
Right. It's good to have that consistency. So is
Mhm.
there another time that works better that
Let me find my schedule. I could probably do, well, I guess you have your board meeting right before this, right? Let's see. Yeah, after May, this time will still work. But we just have meetings. Like I have another meeting that starts right after this, and I always have to prepare for it. And then I have class right after that. So that gets difficult until the camp is done. But then as soon as the camp is done, all I have is classes and normal work and being a mom and my kids being home from school for the summer. So maybe it isn't easier. Let's see. Um, I have Monday afternoons or Friday afternoons pretty open. What would those look like for you? Oh, you are muted.
Friday, what time?
Um, let's see. If we did anytime after 12 o'clock your time.
Oh, okay. 12 works if that's
Yeah. So starting Let's see. If we did the 9th and the 23rd, would that work?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because then the 30th is when we have the camp, so I wouldn't be able to do that. So let me just double check that both of those days are open.
Yeah, and it's more to just keep the connection going and so we don't get too.
Yeah, I like this. So next Friday and then so next Friday the 9th and then the 6th no, the 23rd.
Uh-huh.
And then in
12
June, we can
o'clock
go,
Pacific. Uh-huh.
yeah, and
Right.
then June we can go back to
Oh,
normal.
okay. Great.
Yeah, thank you for being flexible. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
glad you know, we got to make things work so it's kind of it's not stressful.
Well, I mean, a little bit of stress is beneficial for
Well,
us,
no,
right?
uh-huh. Yeah.
But not an overwhelming amount of stress.
Oh, and so if we're done with that, you had sent for the October summit
Oh yeah,
a an abstract. And I replied. I don't know if you got that
I
email
did. I
about.
haven't had a chance to work on it
Okay,
though.
yeah, it's no big hurry, but it's more to since we want to talk about the empathy movement, to think in the kind of the
Yeah,
bigger terms, to actually use the word empathy movement maybe in the title or in the abstract. So it's clear that we're just not, it's just not another summit about empathy per se, but about a
yeah.
bigger
Sorry.
picture movement.
Yeah, I like it. I will update that. Sorry, I'm trying
Mhm.
to find my blue light blocker glasses. Sorry, just a second. Um, yes, I will update that and get it to you. When do
Okay.
you want it by?
Yeah, whenever, it's
Okay.
just something, it only needs to be a couple sentences,
Okay.
a
Yep.
title and a couple sentences. And
I'll look at that this week and because I'm sure it won't take me very long. I just haven't had a chance.
yeah, I'm trying to get people to think in terms of a movement, especially with all these anti-empathy, I think it's a good time to say, well, this is this movement. As a counter too. I think you can
Mhm.
to say, well, our goal is to make empathy a primary cultural value, and we would like the Democrats, and we want a policy where Democrats and Republicans in Congress have monthly empathy circles to talk about
That would
bridging
be
the
amazing.
divide, something like that. So to have a strong position, just as the so anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And can we get, there's a lot of people working on individually on sort of projects and stuff, but to think that to get sort of an identity of that we're part of a larger movement, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that. Did I tell you that one of the classes I'm taking that I'm starting this semester is political psychology?
Mm-mm. What's that
I'm really
about?
looking forward to it because we're talking a lot about political bias. And so it fits perfectly with with my dissertation project and with a lot of this political unwillingness to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure I'll learn some more insights to share with you as well.
Yeah, I was really happy that Kevin, the guy that did the empathy, radical empathy, criticism, was willing to sit and talk. And when we were able to do that, he became totally on board,
Hmm,
really understood and having our definition, having that as a structure, having the definition and the empathy circle was just really powerful in terms of having him understand what we're talking about. And
that's so cool.
to the point that he's now trying to, he's checking to see if he's at Northwestern. So he's checking if there's some other students that would take part in an empathy circle. I thought
Okay,
maybe
awesome.
that, if you're interested, you could always take part. We'd have
Yeah, I saw
two.
that email and
Mhm.
sorry I didn't respond to it, but I would absolutely be happy to
Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
participate in that with him. Did he say he wants to participate in an empathy circle?
Yeah, I said we would do one online to show him how it works, and then he actually was thinking of doing it at the university, So
That's exciting. I mean,
yeah.
especially for somebody who has spoken out against empathy
Hmm.
to want to hold an empathy circle. I think that's
Yeah, I
fantastic.
felt really good about
Yeah, that's a
that.
huge win.
Yeah, so I don't get too worked up. My sense is, like Elon Musk was critical and he was talking with Joe Rogan, and they're, kind of critical of empathy. Even like Jordan Peterson, if you're familiar with him,
Mhm.
but that their definition is sort of, I think, is the problem, And when you're defining empathy, I think what we're doing is really important. Having this clear definition, having it grounded in the empathy circle, and then showing people how it works, and then they can actually experience it. It's like, oh, this is what you're talking about, and it has a clear scope of what we're meaning. And
Mhm.
most people are up for dialogue, generally. And understand the importance of it. And that's what we're basically just asking people to do is get together and talk with each other. And empathy being a deeper form of listening. So,
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I wanted to share with you an empathy experience I had yesterday. Um, a neighbor of mine, her daughter passed away a few weeks ago. And then a week later, her mother passed away. So within a week, her two very close family members passed away. And then on the day that she was going to dress her mother for burial, on the way there, she fell and broke her foot in several places. And so now she's confined to bed. And so all she can do is just sit and ruminate and, obsess about death, basically. And I talked to her yesterday and I found myself analyzing our interaction from the empathy perspective of like, what is my role right now? Because it seems like the first instinct when you have experienced something like I have, like with some very significant deaths close to my family, that caused me to obsess about death for a year. My first impulse was to say, I understand what you're talking about. But I had to hold myself back because I needed to just listen to what she was saying. And I think that I was thinking about it all evening, just how in our attempts to empathize with other people, in a lot of cases, we try to make a connection of like, oh, I understand. I've been there before. But like if we take a step back and really look at their situation, I've never lost my daughter and my mother and broken my foot in the same 2 weeks span, right? And so I actually don't know what she's going through. And so I took that time to just listen to what she was saying. And then later I texted her and said, I will never fully understand how difficult this is, what you're going through. Number one, I care about you. And so like separating out empathy from compassion, like even though I can't understand, I want to listen and I care about you. And number two, I wanted her to know that there is a certain part of her experience that I do understand. And that's that feeling of just being obsessed with death and like it waking me up in the middle of the night and like panic attacks and not being able to get past that. And so it was just interesting. It was an interesting experience for me to take a step back and look at the way that I've empathized
mm-hmm,
in the past,
mm-hmm,
and the way that a lot of people in my community do, because I've been on the end of it where people say, oh, I understand because I've had this thing. And on the receiving end of that, that doesn't feel like empathy.
mm-hmm,
That feels like you're trying to take the spotlight and like you want me to feel bad for you because you've been through something hard. And what I'm experiencing reminds you of something hard that you've
mm-hmm,
gone through. And so I think that's such an important thing when we're talking about empathizing with people is that's just another one of your blocks to empathy. Blocking, is that one that you have on there as a block
mm-hmm. It
to
is,
empathy?
yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
what do you call it?
well, it's identification,
Okay.
one, right? It's like, oh, identify with your situation. At least that, yeah,
Yeah,
versus
because then
just
that makes
being
it about
present.
you.
Yeah. And it shifts the
But
focus to, yeah.
and
And it
so
makes
it's a
people
tricky
feel it.
balance
Yeah. Yeah.
because you want to enter into that space where it's like, oh, we're here together and I'm feeling this with you because of my lived experience. But then not take the spotlight and make it about you and let it be about them.
Yeah, a
And
lot
I
of
think
times
a
you
lot of
can
us aren't
just
good at it.
listen. You can just listen to, and to the point where that you can sense that they're satisfied, that they've been heard to what they want to say,
Mhm.
or they've even say, yeah. So you do want to share too what your experience is. Like in the empathy circle, right? The person is having that struggle. All you're doing is listening to them, right? Reflecting back, and then at some point, it comes to you sharing too. So it's mutual, but the
Yeah.
person may not have the capacity because they're in such a deep, difficult situation
Yeah.
themselves.
And I
So,
wonder if let's say that we were holding an empathy circle and you can tell that somebody is in that deep, dark place. Maybe when it's your turn to share, you don't share as much as you would otherwise. Like, what do you think about that? Like, if
mm,
you're not as open about your internal experience because it would take away from
it could
the
be that,
the
that
anguish.
if you're open and honest and transparent, that could be supportive too to them to feel uh, your honest experience too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that's how I was feeling yesterday. I wanted her to know that she's not alone because a lot of times when it's the middle of the night and you get woken up by one of those like panic attack moments, you feel very alone because everybody else is asleep and you have to go through it all by yourself. And so I did share with her that I've been there so that she would know that when she is alone, she's not really alone
mm-hmm.
because I understand what she's going through.
Well, that's the
Um,
core of the suicidal hotlines, right? Is people just
mhm.
feel that aloneness and they just want someone to talk to, and it's just having someone that listens to them and then they don't feel as alone. That is that line where people commit suicide. It keeps them on the other side.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's interesting how much nuance there is to this because each situation requires you to be thoughtful about how to empathize with somebody else. So it's interesting.
yeah,
Should we get to your presentation?
yeah. If I can. Um, okay. So I'm just screen sharing it here. The next one is going to be August. Oh no, May. May 24th. There's the empathy conference on May 24th. I'm going to present again.
Yes.
So it's going to be, I think I get 30 minutes actually.
And that's the one that's it's an online thing. It's not through the empathy center, right?
No, yeah, it was through the Australian Virtual Conference Center or
That's right.
something like that. And they were going to have it was going to be actually in Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz. And then with all this Trump stuff,
They
and
decided not.
visas, that they actually canceled it because of that. And they had their hotels booked and everything else. So,
Crazy.
yeah, so now it's just going to be online. And we're going to be doing an empathy circle. On the 24th. So if you're around, if you want to, you can just come maybe for that part. I'm not quite sure how that's gonna work, but we'll
Yeah, I have it in my schedule. Do you by chance know what time the empathy circle will be?
let's see. Um, I'm at May 24th. I'm not sure of the. Yeah, I'll have to send that to you, the exact time. I think it's going to be more in the evening. Pacific. Are you in, is Utah in Pacific or what's the times?
Mountain time.
Oh, Mountain Time. Okay. So it's going to be a little bit on the late side. I think it's like it's 7 or something is the circle
Okay.
part, but I can't, yeah, I'm not sure. I have to find, I have it someplace. I'm not sure where it is. Um, yeah. So we have it just to go through. So we're building the empathy movement. So I'm setting the stage that this is part of building an empathy movement, to make empathy a primary personal and cultural value. And, get some notes. And that's the mission, of the Empathy Center. And that this presentation is about defining empathy in the context of the empathy circle, and this and that there's many benefits to empathy. That stronger relationships, better conflict resolution, improved teamwork, effective leadership, greater social cohesion. I mean, it's just a lot of really benefits. But that there's a lot of recent criticisms coming out, about empathy, the Against Empathy, these different books, um, and mention Elon Musk, being critical of empathy. So just setting up that there's kind of this negativity out there, and the dark side of empathy, which is I don't know if you've seen that one, but
Hmm.
it's from
I
an
haven't read it.
academic. You read it?
I haven't read
Oh,
it.
I haven't. Yeah, I have an interview with the author. He was willing to do an interview. So, he's just saying, so there's all these different criticisms. Empathy can fuel revenge. When people deeply empathize with victims, they become more aggressive towards the people they perceive as the perpetrators.
Mhm.
And I think that this is where the the holistic empathy comes in, that if you're empathizing for one side, you're not empathizing for the other. So it's not a problem
Right.
with empathy, it's a problem with a lack of empathy between all the participants. And also, it was a big point with Kevin, in his article, was it was all about, the sort of the woke philosophy is very victim based. It's like saying
Yeah.
there's an oppressor, victim, oppressor, and it brings you into the drama triangle, which I think we've talked about,
Hmm.
that, and it's really empathy, listening to all the sides is what brings you out of it. But that's, I don't say that here. It's just so I'm just setting the stage for all the different criticisms. The sin of empathy. Empathy demands that we enter someone's emotional world so fully that we adopt their perspective uncritically, which can lead us away from the truth. And I just I get tickled here with Jeff Sessions. You know, what is empathy? And this was in Congress. So even in Congress, they had big discussions when Barack Obama was going to choose a Supreme Court justice that had empathy as one of their their qualities. It really just the conservatives went kind of crazy about what is empathy, being very critical about it. And I think this is sort of a side besides, but at that point, it would have been perfect to have had like a hearing about empathy,
Hmm.
right? And explain it and actually have an empathy circle and explain that it's not, again, he's concerned about, victimization, that, it's the victims are going to get all or people who are seen as victims are going to get all the attention. Um, so anyway, I'm just setting it up, kind of thick and heavy about all the criticisms. And then also the current definitions are problematic. There's a lack of consensus. Definitions are obviously not clear to people, as you just see from all these criticisms. It's sort of quite a mess. The academic definitions are it can be abstract. So affective and cognitive empathy, I think, are just very abstract terms that the average person is having difficulty understanding. So we need a clear and practical definition. Is kind of the point I'm making. So any comments up to this point?
I love that. I love taking it out of the cognitive and affective realm, and that's very esoteric, very abstract, and just say, like, here's the practice. The practice is listen to them until they feel heard. Like if we can just define it in a way like that, that is very action oriented, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. It might be hard and I might need some reminders, but at least it's something that I now have a roadmap for what I'm expected to do in the situation. So I really like that.
Great. Yeah, because that's where I go into the that's where we're headed. Is that so? So yeah, why define empathy? And also, I want to have to be clear that we want to define empathy in the context of the empathy circle. So I want to take it out of the abstract and to make it concrete, exactly like you're saying. It's like let's sit down and how do we actually do it so you can experience it, the definition, so it's not so abstract. And I think the empathy circle gives us that practical,
Mhm.
and we can map other definitions. So we're clear on what we're meaning, and then when other people have their definitions and people are critical of it, of empathy, we can bring them into the empathy circle and display, experience what it is specifically they're criticizing, and jump in any point. And the model I'm calling holistic empathy, and it consists of these parts: basic empathy, self empathy, and I'm not quite sure. This is what would generally be called empathy, like Rogers would call basic empathy, empathy. And I'm not sure to use the word basic, or, it's anyway, there's a little bit of a, not sure. It's just trying to
Hmm.
differentiate it a little bit.
Well, I mean,
So
if you say what you mean by it, then it makes it clear. So I don't know if you want to have each of the definitions actually up on the screen or if you're going to just say it out loud.
yeah, I was
That might
gonna
be.
just give the overview, and then maybe I should have it defined beforehand, but I was gonna give the overview and then go into detail. So, like the next one here is, okay, what is basic empathy? So here's an empathy circle, and the empathy circle works with, there's a speaker, there's an active listener, there's silent listeners. The speaker is speaking about, the topic or whatever's on their mind. The basic empathy is the active listener is just listening to them and hearing them and reflecting back. So that's sort of the essence, and to have the speaker feel heard. And this part can actually, I mean, there's a huge amount that can be done to describe just this phenomenon of
Mhm.
just listening to the other person. I mean, it fits with your friend, right, who was, with her struggles with the deaths in the family, that you, as the active listener, just there to listen to her and hear her, make her feel like she feels heard to her satisfaction, right? That she's been heard out to the point where she feels satisfied that she's been heard and understood for what's going on for her.
Mhm.
And I ad lib all the rest, the details about this too. But and then the definition is based. This base is definition is based on the work of Carl Rogers. So we have the whole Rogers uh, framework to build on, that in terms as a reference. So in terms of that phenomenon of the active listener listening to the speaker, Rogers describes it as the empathy is the listener's effort to hear the other person deeply, accurately, and non-judgmentally. Empathy involves skillful, reflective listening that clarifies and amplifies the person's own experience and meanings without imposing the listener's own material. So when you're listening to your friend, you know, you were kind of holding off sharing your own experience because you don't want to impose your experience on the experience of your friend. And so that's that process
Yeah,
is
that part is the basic empathy. Um, by the way, I just have to say I love his definition so much. I so prefer it to a lot of the other academic definitions that talk about emotion contagion and that it's kind of this reactive process. There's nothing in what he just said that's
mm-mm,
about reactive.
no.
It's he uses the term skillful and let's see, effort, right? So effort and skill, that what that says right there is it is a willful process where you're choosing to do something.
Hmm.
And I think that is such an important difference between this definition and all of the other definitions that people have problems with.
Yeah, it's just so foundational. Yeah, and he has a lot of different definitions, or he describes the phenomenon that we're talking about and just does it quite eloquently. Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's a beautiful definition. Do you know where that quote actually comes from exactly?
it's from let's see, defining empathy. So if you go to the defining empathy site, there's different models.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the
Carl
Carl
Rogers.
Rogers model. You can find it, and
Okay.
it's
Because I
from
want
this.
to cite it sometimes.
Yeah, this is like so foundational paper. It's like everything that kind of I do is sort of based, really on his work. And this
Mhm.
paper is one of his synthesis, and he also has it in video. I don't know if you've seen his video of this.
I've seen some of it, but I haven't seen all of those.
So yeah, there's the whole paper is there, and then he has a second paper that I link to active listening. So in the context of the so those two papers are really good for in terms of his definition. Yeah, but another aspect he says is an empathic way of being. So that paper is about an empathic way of being. So it's more than just this. It's more than just the skill, but it's like an attitude. A
Yeah.
personality trait is
Mm.
a way of being with another person that has several facets. It means entering the private perceptual world of the other, becoming thoroughly at home in it. It involves being sensitive moment by moment to the changing felt meanings which flow in this other person, to the fear or rage or tenderness or confusion or whatever he or she is experiencing. So I think that, again, it's not sort of the reactions. It's also not just with suffering, right? It's
Hmm.
sometimes they're defining empathy as like it's about seeing somebody else's suffering. This is like, oh, it's their full experience of who
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah, because that's another criticism I have had is that it always seems to presuppose that there's some sort of suffering, and I don't like that.
Hmm. And yeah, so that's kind of giving the basic framework of basic empathy, and that can be described like a lot. I mean, there's a lot of description about that phenomenon that can be, expanded on. Um, and at later point, I think just explaining how that phenomenon works, why it works, what the experience is, and then the other aspect, sort of breaking it down, is the self empathy. And that's where, again, we have the speaker and then the active listener. So the active listener is listening to the speaker, but by listening to the speaker, they actually allow the speaker to go more deeply into their own experience. So your friend, by you listening to her, if you're doing active listening, you say, "Oh, I hear you're, really feeling in distress about these deaths in the family." She says, "Yeah, I feel really sad." So you're hearing her sadness. So she's able to open up, explore, and share the deeper feelings and the nuances that are going on for her. And your listening is actually supporting her self empathy. So, um, and Rogers sort of hinted at that, so he didn't, I don't think he used the word self empathy, but he said by being listened to by someone who understands makes it possible for persons to listen more accurately to themselves with greater empathy towards their own visceral experiencing, their own vaguely felt meanings. So he's basically, talking about self-empathy here.
Hmm.
Okay, anything else about
Just
that?
just how much I love it. That's all I have to say. I love this so much. It's
Great. I love your loving it. It's fun to talk to you about it all. Okay, imaginative empathy. So,
oh, this is cute.
yeah, I ran it through AI and
I
the
love that.
Ghibli part. So you can imagine yourself in any sort of a role, right? So, and this is a different aspect, and this is that he is in a empathy circle. Usually we just listen sort of with this direct empathy, but you can uh, there's another level of empathy, and this is, and I don't mention it here, but it's what oftentimes cognitive empathy is referred to is like it's an imaginative. They say it's an imaginative experience, and what it is this is in the empathy circle. It's that we can take on any role in any perspective. So, for example, Meryl Streep, she talks about this experience as an actor. Is I've thought a lot about the power of empathy in my work. It's the current that connects me and my actual pulse to a fictional character in a made-up story. It allows me to feel, pretend feelings, sorrows, and imagine pain. So she's imagining herself. It's another way of knowing. It's not like this direct, basic empathy, but it's a way of imagining being in someone else's situation. So she imagines herself being Margaret Thatcher or Julia Child and takes on that role and acts out that role. And that's a form of sensing into that other person, which is different than, basic empathy. It's sort of an imaginative role,
Mhm.
and you could even imagine her. These are four characters she plays, so she takes on the roles. But you could imagine double empathy, where the imaginative empathy. This gets a little complicated. They actually empathize with each other, right? So Margaret Thatcher is empathizing with Julia Child as an active listener. I don't know if that this might get a little complicated, but
Yeah. So have you actually tried this?
I know we have. Maybe I should lead with that example. So and we don't do it a lot in the empathy circle because I see it as sort of a next step, and I've been
Uh-huh.
focusing so much on the first step. And we have in our training, we used to have 6 sessions, and now it's down to 4. But session number 5 was we want to get people familiar with facilitating a conflict in the
Mm.
empathy circle as a facilitator. So I created a scenario where there's family members who their siblings who their parent just died, and each of the siblings feels that they should get the full inheritance, and they're in conflict with each other. And I
This
give
is exactly one of the scenarios that I'm planning on using for my research. That's so
oh,
weird.
really?
And it didn't come because I don't think you shared that with me, but that's one of the scenarios that I'm going to be using. So that's crazy.
Oh, cool. But there's recordings of that lesson if you ever want to
Hmm.
take a look at it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so the siblings, we give a basic, you're the, you're a female, you've been taking care of the mother, you feel you spent a lot of time and you deserve more of the inheritance. Another member is a male. He helped take care of the father, so he feels he deserves more inheritance. So we give the scenario, the basic scenario for each, and we say now you're in conflict and you have to argue with each other about why you should get the inheritance, and the facilitator facilitates that.
Hmm.
So the people are imagining themselves in these roles, and so they have the imaginative empathy component, but they're also doing basic empathy by doing the active listening within the empathy circle. And we could even imagine ourselves not only in the conflict, but we could imagine ourselves, okay, you're a tiger, I'm a cow, somebody's the silent listeners, or whatever those animals are, the koalas and
Is that a
yeah,
baboon or an orangutan?
orangutan,
Orangutan.
orangutan, yeah. And so we could imagine ourselves being them, and then we can act from that role, but we can also actively listen to each other. So it's adding empath, the basic empathy.
Yeah, I like that.
And the same thing, just to, or it opens up our imagination. We can be fruit, we can be anything. So that's sort of the imaginative empathy, sort of that imaginative aspect. And then the holistic empathy is sort of awareness of the quality of empathy between all the participants. So if everyone is empathizing with everyone else and also, empathizing with themselves and being aware of the level of empathy within the group, and empathizing with the sensing into the experience of the group. If when you walk into a room, you can read the room
Mhm.
oftentimes, are the people open, are they friendly? You're sort of sensing into the wholeness of the space. So there's multiple dimensions to this holistic empathy. And so the holistic empathy, well, and holistic empathy is made up of all the different components, so basic empathy is sensing into the experience, others' experience. Self-empathy is sensing into your own experience. Imaginative empathy is imagining, yourself in different roles. And empathy is sensing into the community's experience and all the components of that. And the holistic empathy is very important for a lot of the criticisms for of empathy, like the one that says, "Oh, you're empathizing with one person and not empathizing with the other, so you're empathizing with the victim." But that's only partial, because with holistic empathy, everyone is empathizing with everyone else. So
Mhm.
the person who sees them is seen as the oppressor and the oppressed, they would actually be sitting down and listening to each other, and you wouldn't be trying to rescue someone and becoming a perpetrator in the process. You'd be listening to both. So it actually, this holistic empathy really helps with some of the criticism, addressing. And, I think that's one of the things to go into depth, how the some of the criticisms kind of fit into this model.
Can I ask a question about
Oh
the
yeah.
holistic empathy?
Hmm.
As a facilitator, when you notice that there is not mutual empathy happening, like if you notice that there's the imbalance, how do you help them recognize what you're seeing? Is that something that you just say, I'm noticing da 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 da?
When
Like,
it's your turn to speak, you can speak to it, but you don't want to
mhm.
break out of the structure. And with the empathy circle, if do you have a scenario maybe that you could say, for example, what's the scenario?
um, I'm just imagining, let's bring in that hypothetical Democrat and Republican Congress empathy
Hmm.
circle. And they have a specific way that they engage with each other. And it has become deeply ingrained in the way that they talk to each other. And so you bring them together and you teach them this new way of interacting with each other, and they find themselves falling out of it because
Okay.
it's not part of their habits.
Hmm.
So
They would just
um,
stop reflecting. They would just start speaking and not reflecting, or they would reflect and instead of reflecting, they just share their own ideas.
Yeah. So would you stop them when it's their turn to do the reflective listening and remind them to reflect?
Yeah, if there's different ways of doing it. One is, there's this speaker and the listener, and the speaker is saying, "Oh, I think we need to spend more money on healthcare," and then the listener says, "Healthcare is a bunch of bullshit. That's just a government giveaway," something like that.
Mhm.
So then as a facilitator, I would ask the speaker, I might ask, "Did you feel heard or understood?"
Hmm.
And they'd say, "Hell no." It's like, he didn't hear me at all. I said, "Well, say it again." And then he said, "Well, healthcare, we need this. It's really important." And he keeps going until he gets heard to his or her satisfaction. And so that's one way of addressing it, right? You can ask if the person is very familiar with the empathy circle practice, they say, "No, you didn't hear me," because the idea is for the speaker to feel heard to their satisfaction. and the speaker didn't feel heard to their
Hmm.
satisfaction. So if they're already familiar with the practice, they've done it several times, they would know to just say, no, you didn't get me. I'm going to say it again. Right. And
Yeah.
then they keep saying it again till they get heard to their satisfaction. If they're not familiar with the practice, you can ask the speaker if they've been heard to their satisfaction. They'll say no. So then you say, just go ahead, say it again until you feel heard. So I would help keep them in the practice. And, or I might, if it kind of goes on for a while, I might just say to the listener, just reflect back what you're hearing. That would be kind of my last,
Hmm.
you know, uh, and then if they just can't do it, that we want to be sure that the speaker does feel heard. Maybe they've done 5, 6, 7 tries and the listener just can't get it, and the speaker is getting more and more frustrated. I, as the facilitator, would maybe reflect back to the speaker what they were saying, "Oh, you think empathy is? I mean, that healthcare is super important for your constituents." They say, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying." Then I might say to the speaker, can you just, I mean, the listener, can you reflect that back? Just like I did. So
Hmm.
there's kind of different ways of doing it. The best is if the speaker just keeps saying it, they know how it works. They just keep saying it till they feel heard to their satisfaction, but you can kind of help with that.
Yeah, I like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your
No,
flow.
that's fine.
Go
That's what
ahead.
we're here for, is just to kind of explore, this. So, um, yeah, so the holistic, so that's holistic empathy, and the next steps, I'm just advising, or people say, to ground your definitions. So if you're like, we're going to be, all the people at this conference are going to be doing empathy, talks. I say, the next steps, you can try grounding your definition, how you're defining it, in the empathy circle. Or if you hear other people talking about the empathy circle, about empathy, try to understand how it fits into the empathy circle framework. And I did that with the author for that Scientific American article. That was one of the
Mhm.
things I really, she really appreciated. I think it really helped because when she's talking to the academics, you just get lost in all these definitions. It's like, where is it specifically what's happening in the empathy circle, and how are you experiencing it? And then also the criticisms, ground the criticisms of empathy in the empathy circle. Where do you see it playing out? And that's what I did with Kevin, right?
Hmm.
I had the framework of the empathy circle, talked about it, and then his, tried to map his definitions and saying, you're basically, it's not, what you're talking about is not what we would consider empathy. And then, he also said, well, it was sort of clickbait. His criticism, a lot of this criticism is sort of clickbait, like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm gonna, upset everybody, all the progressives, and they're gonna all click. And he said it really worked. He said he got a lot of attention, out of it. So, but he also sees the importance of, people having dialogue. So,
That's
you
a
got that.
funny way to approach it. Because I mean, I get the benefit of trying to make something seem more spicy so that you get more people to look at it. But also, I don't know, it's a bit of a bait and switch when he doesn't actually deeply believe his own criticism that he's saying.
Yeah, I think, yeah, he believes it, but yeah, it to a certain degree. But
Yeah.
he has that, and I think Paul Bloom was doing the same thing.
Mhm.
It's a bit of a clickbaity sort of a thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's it. I was thinking of adding, since I did this in about 15 minutes, and I think I last time, and I have about I have 30 minutes for the presentation. What I thought I would do is add, let's look at an example of the current definition of affective and cognitive empathy, and then put a couple slides in there and see how they map onto this model.
Hmm.
And pretty much the affective empathy, it's a reaction, so it doesn't really fit in that sense. It's a reaction, or it's emotional contagion. I mean, there's multiple things come under that affective empathy, right? It's a emotional contagion, emotional reaction, and I think maybe sympathy comes in. Sometimes people add sympathy. Is there other phenomenon in that you're
I
seeing?
mean, that it just what that brings to the surface for me is that identification. You
Hmm.
immediately start feeling it because you felt it before. Um, and it might not be the thing that they're feeling, but you're feeling something that you relate to. And so it might be emotion contagion, but it might not be. It might be your misinterpretation
Hmm.
of the emotion that they're
Identification, that's what I've been using. Identifying and then projection
yeah,
could be.
projection as
Uh-huh.
well. Because
Hmm.
you might think, well, if I were in that situation, this is how I would feel, but that's not necessarily what they're feeling.
Do you think that's kind of wrapped into the affective empathy
I think
model?
so
Hmm.
because it does tend to be the phenomenon itself. I mean, I'm just reflecting back on what I experienced yesterday. The phenomenon itself, it's a very much a reactionary process, and forcing yourself to slow it down a little bit and analyze the emotion that you're feeling helps you to see those different possibilities of what affective empathy, like what aspect of affective empathy is taking place inside of you.
Yeah, so what I want to do is just I have a lot of notes, about effective empathy. So I just want to create some slides and give that as an example, basically saying, this affective cognitive empathy models not, how does that fit into the empathy circle?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just need to kind of I have it all written down. I just need to create those slides and, and then there's the cognitive empathy. So the cognitive empathy is the word imagination. Imagine yourself in someone else's situation, I think there's that aspect. And then there's understanding too. You hear understanding a lot. Like cognitive
Mm-hmm.
empathy is understanding. And, what do people mean by that understanding? It's, and how does, I think some of that's a little bit vague
I
how
think it's
that
vague
works.
too, because it also doesn't, when you say the word understanding, it implies that there's a process of trying to understand, but you haven't actually talked about the process,
Hmm.
like the decision to put yourself in there and like slow your thinking down and not be so reactive in order to try and understand and listen to the other person. Um, and I mean, with that as well, there's going to be some projection that happens as well because you might think if you haven't slowed down to actually listen to them, you might think that you have cognitive empathy, but you don't because based on your own like quick thinking. If you're thinking of it as like system one versus system two thinking, thinking fast and slow. If you're just making a quick decision about this is what their experience is without having slowed it down, then it undermines the cognitive empathy as well.
Or the understanding, you're saying that your understanding would not be accurate because
Mm-hmm.
it could be inaccurate understanding that you have if you haven't slowed it down to listen carefully or.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what it is. Just using the word understanding, it assumes
Hmm.
that you have slowed down and gone through that process, but most of us don't.
Yeah,
We
and that
just
in the
jump
empathy,
to
yeah,
go
in the
ahead.
empathy circle, it's the listening to the other person. And in the process of listening, I had created those models. I do want to expand on those. Maybe that's something we can look at some point. You remember the little drawings, the figures and the
Oh, so
feelings
good.
within
Yeah.
that. So I think that could be just a lot could be done to, make that much richer sort of a model so that to make those differentiations and have something visual to see those models and um, that I had that little picture of the understanding. So you're building a frame, sensing into through your listening. That's the part you're talking about that's missing is the sensing into,
Hmm.
and in the process of sensing into the other person's experience, your mind automatically starts putting together the pieces into some kind of a model of who they are. And that model, I would think, is the understanding component.
Yeah. I think that you should add your your figures in there
Okay. Yeah.
because I think it's very helpful to see it visually like that. You know, with your empathy circle, with the arrows and all of that, like explaining it that way, it makes it very easy to understand. So putting in those other graphics, I think would be very helpful as well.
Yeah. So that's
And I've got to go,
okay.
unfortunately. So
Yeah. So we'll see you in 2 weeks, right?
yeah, so May
Okay.
9th.
hmm
And yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this. This
Yeah,
will
it's
be
a lot
fun
of
to keep
fun.
moving
Really
forward.
appreciate your presence and insight too. Not a lot of people have the level of insight that you have on this.
Well,
So,
when you obsess about it for years, like you and I
mhm.
do, you come up with several insights on it.
Yeah.
Also, last or 2 weeks ago, you had asked if maybe I'd be able to facilitate an empathy circle at the May 24th event. Is
hmm
that something that's still happening? Are you still breaking out into breakout rooms?
Yeah, that was when I was gonna. I can send you the date, but it's going to be in the evening, so it might be kind of late. It's going to be, I think, at 7 Pacific time.
Okay, I mean that's fine. That's
Okay, yeah,
the night is young for me at that
I
point.
still have to figure out, like they charge for the whole workshop. I've been asking if she would give free admission to just the facilitators to come in and facilitate, uh, so I
Okay,
can
yeah, because
let
I'd
you
be
know.
happy to do that. I'd
Okay.
be happy to just attend and watch, but if you need more facilitators, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay, great. Good. I'll put you on the list then. All right.
Okay, well,
See
have a good week.
you too.
See you
Bye.
later.